वेरी गुड इवनिंग टू ऑल ऑफ यू। कैसे सब लोग? आज का टॉपिक है ई कॉमर्स ट्रांजेक्शन अंडर जीएसटी। In this topic, we are going to discuss mainly two broad parameter. What is the meaning of two broad parameter? Two broad parameter, let me explain through. I have shared whiteboard. Now, if I am talking about, let's say, e-commerce operator. If I am talking about e-commerce operator, then क्या नाम आपके इमीडिएटली माइंड में आता है? व्हाट इज द नेम विच कम्स टू योर माइंड? कैन यू प्लीज टेल मी इन द चैट कि क्या नाम आपके इमीडिएटली माइंड में आता है? व्हाट इज द ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर? कैन यू प्लीज टेल मी वन और टू नेम ऑफ द ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर? सो यू विल से वेरी गुड इवनिंग विराज मोहम्मद। मुझे एक या दो नाम बताइए जो आपके माइंड में इमीडिएटली क्लिक करता है व्हेन यू यूज द वर्ड ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर। You will say, sir, Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggy, Zomato. Correct. It can be Amazon. It can be Flipkart. It can be Zomato, Swiggy, Ola, Uber. Then, now this concept we are going to discuss in detail, but now I am dividing into two parts. I am dividing into two parts. Whether e-commerce operator are considered as deemed supplier. So first try to understand this. What is the concept of deemed supplier? Mr. A is actual supplier. Mr. A is actual supplier. He is providing the service through e-commerce operator. Now I am using the word notified services. Through e-commerce operator to the ultimate consumer. In this example, if I ask who is the actual supplier, then it is immediately answered that Mr. A is the actual supplier. But in the GST, there is a concept of deemed supplier, ECO, which is notified and only for services. The services which has been notified and are being rendered through e-commerce operator, then the liability to pay the GST would not be on Mr. A. The liability to pay the GST would be shifted to the ECO as if he is a supplier, and that is the reason we are using the word he is a deemed supplier. The GST return, etc. He would file the GST return. He will pay the taxes to the government. He will issue the invoice to the customer. Every responsibility would be on that e-commerce operator. Now, which all services are notified? There are 4 services which has been notified in that case. There are the 4 services which has been notified. There are the 4 services which has been notified, and in these cases, we will pay the tax e-commerce operator. The name is passenger transportation services, like Ola, Uber. Then we'll discuss in detail. I'm just giving you the brief. We'll discuss in detail Second is hotel accommodation. I'm using the name, let's say MMT, make my trip. Small carpenting and plumbing services like UC, Urban Company. And last is restaurant services, and that is Swiggy Zomato. What is the meaning? If these services are being rendered through e-commerce operator, which services? Passenger transportation services, hotel accommodation, carpenting, plumbing, Zomato, Swiggy, restaurant. When they are provided through ECO, then he is nothing but the mediator. But in the GST, they have bring the concept of 9 subsection 5 of CGST Act. Similar 5 subsection 5 of IGST Act, which talks about that actual supplier is not liable to pay the taxes. Who will liable to pay the taxes? ECO. And they are saying it will be considered as if the services has been rendered by the ECO. So only for the understanding purpose, I am using the word deemed supplier. I'm using the word deemed supplier. So if I just try to remember the nature of the transaction specified in the 9.5, I can say one is Ola Uber, second is MMT Make My Trip, third is Urban Company, and fourth is Zomato Swiggy. Just I've given the example, the certain example of the e-commerce operator, but it could be anything. It could be like Make My Trip, Go Ibibo. It could be the Oyo Rooms, etc. Now, if e-commerce operator are not deemed supplier under 9.5, are not making the supplies of their own product. See, let's say I'm Amazon. I can list my product also, right? I can list my product also on my website. To that extent, Amazon would not be considered as e-commerce operator. क्या मतलब हुआ इस बात का? Suppose LG is listing their product on the website. It's selling the product, LG is selling the product through on website, through stores, through multi-ways. If any company are making the sale of the product through own website, then they would not be considered as ECO to certain extent for the purpose of TCS. Not collecting the so if e-commerce operator who is not 9.5, who is not making their own supply and who is collecting the cash from the buyer and making the payment to the supplier, e-commerce operator, what is the how the transaction is being happen in the Amazon? Let's say Mr. A is a supplier. He lists their product on Amazon Flipkart. Then Mr. B, buyer, purchase the product from the Amazon website. A will deliver the goods to B, or Amazon can make the arrangement of delivery. That not a problem. Invoice kiska hoga? Please tell me. When the goods which was listed on the Amazon website, the goods which was listed on the Amazon website and purchased by Mr. B through Amazon website, who will issue the invoice? Amazon will issue the invoice to Mr. B or A will issue the invoice to Mr. B? Kindly give the answer. इनवॉइस इस केस में कौन इश्यू करेगा? Who will issue the invoice? Will the Amazon issue the tax invoice or will the Mr. A issue the tax invoice to Mr. B? I'm talking about Mr. B. B को इनवॉइस किसका मिलेगा? A का मिलेगा या Amazon का मिलेगा? That is my question. Very good evening, Namrata. See, try to differentiate. He is not deemed supplier. He is not deemed supplier. In that case, the invoice would be issued by Mr. A by A to B. जो टैक्स इनवॉइस होगा वो A इश्यू करेगा B के ऊपर. In this transaction, the taxes will be collected by A and paid the same to the government. तो अमेजन क्या करेगा? अमेजन विल कलेक्ट द TCS. Amazon will collect the TCS under section 52. Amazon will collect the TCS under section 52. किससे collect करेगा? When the money amount of the transaction is being paid to Amazon by B and Amazon in turn making the payment to A, then he will reduce the amount of the TCS. Let's say the total collection is 1 lakh. Let's say the total collection is 1 lakh and whatever the rate are there, we will discuss the rate. Let's say it is 1000, then 1000 will be deducted and the balance amount will be paid to the Mr. A. अभी आप rate of taxes पे मत जाना. I have not clarified the rate of taxes as of now. To make the example very simple, I have taken 1000 in the rounding off. Might be the actual TCS का rate would be different, which we will discuss in some time. Now, पहला ये बात क्लियर कीजिए. Two concept we have discussed, section 52 or section 95. First tell me who is the supplier? Who is supplier? Here I can say in the section 52 where the TCS is applicable, supplier will be actual supplier only. For the time being, I am assuming my supplier is Mr. A. But in the 9-5 transaction, who will be the supplier? Mr. A will not be the supplier. Rather, the ECO would be the supplier. First confirm, please confirm. ये पहला point difference clear है? Please confirm. Is this first difference is clear to all? Geeta Kalidas ji, very good evening. Who will be considered as supplier? In the section 52, I am saying the actual supplier. And in the section 95, I am saying the e-commerce operator. ये पहला वाला बात clear है? Is it clear? Perfect. Second, who will issue the invoice to customer? Who will issue the invoice to customer? Obviously, here Mr. A will issue and here e-commerce operator will issue. Please confirm whether second point is also clear or not. Please confirm whether second point is clear or not. Second, clear or not? Perfect. Now जस्ट एक बार रिपीट कर दीजिए विच वेदर सो नाउ लेट मी थर्ड पॉइंट नेचर of supply. It can be goods or it can be services, but it can be only services. Because 9 subsection 5 has notified only 4 categories of transaction. 9.5 is applicable only for the service transaction. So as of now, there are only 4 categories. The services has been specified in the 9.5. But here it can be goods or it can be services. कीर्ति कौन सा पॉइंट क्लियर नहीं है? कीर्ति बताओ मुझे, पॉइंट बताओ कौन सा क्लियर नहीं है। और आपने लेट ज्वाइन किया है, अदरवाइज आपने लेट ज्वाइन किया है। कीर्ति मैं रिपीट कर रहा हूं, दिस इज नॉट द न्यू पॉइंट विच आई एम एक्सप्लेनिंग, आई एम जस्ट रिपीटिंग। फिर भी मुझे बताओ कौन सा पॉइंट क्लियर नहीं है। काइंडली टेल मी वाई ECU, बिकॉज Namrata, in the 9 subsection 5, they are saying that it will be deemed that e-commerce operator is a supplier. It will be deemed that e-commerce is a supplier. So 9.5 transaction has shifted the responsibility of the GST compliances on e-commerce operator, who is mediator. But they have shifted the responsibility and therefore he will issue the tax invoice. He will pay the tax to the government. He will issue the invoice. He will pay the tax to the government. Everything will be done by the e-commerce operator as if he is a supplier. यहां तक क्लियर है नम्रता एंड एवरीवन? कीर्ति, नम्रता, आई थिंक सेकंड पॉइंट पे डाउट था। आई होप इट इज क्लियर, राइट? अभी भी कोई डाउट नहीं? कोई भी डाउट है तो आराम से पूछिए। First, let me develop the base to start the chapter. Because अगर ये फंडा क्लियर नहीं है तो आपको ये चैप्टर में कंफ्यूजन बार बार आएगा। ठीक है? सो supplies which has been notified in the 9.5, supply which has been notified in the 9.5, there are the 4 supplies which has been notified in the 9.5. What are the supplies? First is passenger transportation services. Then second is hotel accommodation. Third is small carpenting and plumbing services. Fourth is restaurant. Now, in this case, example, I can say it is nothing but Ola. Hotel, I can say MMT. Small carpenting, I can say Urban Clap. Restaurant, in case, I can say the Zomato. I'll come back to this page, but again, I'm asking the repetitive question to all of you. A is owning a restaurant. A का क्या है? रेस्टोरेंट है। कीर्ति ने बोला कि आज सर बहुत पढ़ाई कर ली तो खाना घर पे नहीं खाएंगे, बाहर से मंगाएंगे। तो दोस्तों ने क्या किया? खाने का ऑर्डर जोमेटो पे किया। जोमेटो का खुद का किचन है या जोमेटो लेके आता है? जोमेटो विल टेक फ्रॉम ए and deliver to Kirti, or he will prepare its own food? In my example, the possibility है, but in my example which I like to convey. आप लोग रिप्लाई नहीं कर रहे हो। विराज, अब्दुल, प्रेरणा, नम्रता, Geeta. So in this case, Zomato, see, when Kirti is giving the order, he is selecting the A का restaurant. ठीक है. Zomato will collect the food and make the supply to the Kirti. Simple. Zomato will collect the food and deliver at Kirti. Now the point is, who will pay the tax in this transaction? Who will pay the tax in this transaction? Zomato is middleman. Zomato is middleman. Absolutely correct. Zomato is taking the order in case of restaurant. Invoice is sent to the customer by restaurant, not by Zomato, while Zomato is in category of issue. Now the problem is, my dear friend, in case of 9(5), how you are saying this? सक्सेना जी, मिस्टर सक्सेना, क्या लिखा? रतिवेश सक्सेना. Rativesh Saxena, make sure if the transaction is covered in the 9(5), the responsibility is shifted to the Zomato. The tax invoice will be issued by the Zomato to the Kirti. It will not by A. Zomato will deliver and Zomato will issue the tax invoice to the government. It will issue the tax invoice to the Kirti and pay the tax to the government. In this case, he will be considered as deemed supplier. Now, on this transaction, try to understand. Let's say the food is worth of ₹1,000. Okay. And when Zomato has issued the tax invoice, he has collected 5% tax. Let's say he has collected total 1050. Issued the tax invoice to the consumer. Now, please tell me whether Zomato will collect something from restaurant. कुछ तो commission collect करेगा ना. Zomato will also collect some commission from the restaurant A na. Will the Zomato also levy some charges? Also take some commission from A for selling this particular transaction? Let's say it is 10%, 100 rupees. For that ₹100, Zomato will issue the tax invoice once again. 100 का tax invoice issue करेगा किसको? Restaurant को. Zomato will issue the tax invoice of ₹100 by charging the GST, let's say 18%. So can I say the one invoice will be issued by Zomato to consumer for food charges? One invoice will be issued by the Zomato to the restaurant for their commission charges. Is it clear? एक बार confirm करना. Is it clear? रतिवेश कोई डाउट है तो पूछ लेना, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं. यू कैन आस्क मल्टीपल टाइम. इफ यू नॉट क्लियर, you can ask multiple time because you have given one point that invoice will be issued by the Mr. A restaurant. Answer is no. In the 9(5) ka transaction, invoice would always be issued by the deemed supplier. When he is taking the commission, he will also raise the tax invoice? Yes. Whether Zomato will collect the TCS under section 52? Now the answer is no. Try to understand. If the e-commerce operator himself considered as deemed supplier by virtue of the 9(5), if e-commerce operator are considered as a deemed supplier by virtue of the 9(5), then TCS provision will not be applicable. क्या बोला मैंने? कि अगर ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर खुद डीम्ड सप्लायर है 95 के कारण, तब इस टीसीएस के प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल नहीं होंगे. इट मींस हियर द जोमेटो विल नॉट कलेक्ट द टीसीएस ऑन दिस ट्रांजेक्शन. ठीक है. Now, again coming back to the 9-5 transaction. In the 9-5, we have discussed 4 category of the transaction. We will go into the actual wording. Let me go into the actual wording. But before that, summarize. I'm giving you the summary of the entire chapter. Here, there is no exclusion. It means in case of passenger transportation services, motor cab, maxi cab, omnibus, every time the ECO would be the supplier, deemed supplier. Perfect. In case of the hotel, there is one exclusion. If the hotel is registered, then ECO will not be considered as deemed supplier. अगर होटल रजिस्टर्ड है तो मेक माई ट्रिप, Oyo rooms, Go Ibibo, they will not be considered as deemed supplier. Same thing happening with the carpenting, plumbing, etc. Meaning thereby, if this carpenter is registered in the GST, then these UC will not be considered as 9-5 under the deemed supplier category. Restaurant, no matter whether registered or not registered, always Zomato, Swiggy would be the deemed supplier. Here there is only one exclusion. What is the exclusion? The exclusion is other than specified premises. क्या exclusion है? Other than specified premises. Now it means exclusion का मतलब क्या हुआ? Exclusion का मतलब हुआ अगर होटल रजिस्टर्ड है और अगर कोई सप्लाई एमएमटी के थ्रू की जा रही है, then MMT will not be responsible. MMT will not be considered as deemed supplier. Who will be the supplier? Actual hotel will be considered as supplier. Same, if carpenter is registered, then UC will not be considered as deemed supplier. Same, अगर रेस्टोरेंट रजिस्टर्ड है या अनरजिस्टर्ड है कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. It is exactly same like passenger transportation services. It means the mediator, Zomato, Swiggy, Ola, Uber would be considered as deemed supplier. But in the restaurant, only one exception. What is the exception? Other than specified premises. That we will discuss. यहां तक क्लियर है? एक बार कंफर्म करें. Is it clear? हाँ, Kirti, in case of Amazon example, supplier will issue the invoice. In case of the Zomato example, Zomato will issue the invoice. So can I say, tell me, can I say that in case of 9-5, can I say in case of the 9-5, no TCS? Can we say in case of the 9-5 invoice by ECO? Can we say in the 9-5 no tax collection at source provision would be applicable under section 52? Can we say the invoice will be issued by the e-commerce operator? See, Namrata, what is the logic of the all such category? If you see nowadays, the service transaction majority which is being routed through e-commerce operator. आजकल मुझे बताइए होटल में जाके खाना खाने के कंपेयर में क्या जोमेटो स्विगी का बिजनेस नहीं बढ़ा? Now instead of government going to each restaurant and ensuring the compliance is being done or not, they are saying now Zomato has to do the compliance. सेम थिंग, वो एक एक कारपेंटर की जगह वो अब क्या कर रहे हैं? अर्बन क्लैप को देख रहे हैं। एक एक होटल वाले की जगह अब किसको देख रहे हैं? एमएमटी को देख रहे हैं। सो नाउ बिकॉज दे आर पुटिंग द कंप्लायंसेस ऑन द बिगर प्लेयर, सो इट विल बी द ईज, बेटर कंट्रोल, लेसर चांस ऑफ नॉन कंप्लायंसेस। इज इट क्लियर? नम्रता, मोहम्मद, सक्सेना, प्रेरणा, एवरीवन, इज इट क्लियर? आज का चैप्टर बहुत प्रैक्टिकल है। दैट इज द ओनली रीजन टिल नाउ आई हैव नॉट स्टार्टेड द चैप्टर एट ऑल। अभी तक मैंने चैप्टर स्टार्ट किया ही नहीं है। आई लाइक टू डेवलप सम बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ द चैप्टर। अभी तो मैं स्टार्ट करूंगा चैप्टर, बट बिफोर दैट यू शुड बी अवेयर अबाउट दिस कॉन्सेप्ट। Invoice will be issued by main supplier. Absolutely correct, Rena. Absolutely. Invoice will be issued by the main supplier in case of exclusion category. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं। Now, in case of section 52, in case of section 52, we have discussed that invoice will be issued by main supplier. Let's again understand the concept of section 52. Mr. A is supplying the goods through ECU. Let's say Amazon, Flipkart, to Mr. B. B is making the payment to ECO and ECO in turn making the payment to Mr. A. If this is the case, it can be goods, it can be services. In services, I can say other than notified. A who make the supply to Mr. B through e-commerce operator, then the TCS provision would apply. But invoice will be issued by A to B. Invoice will be issued by A to B. Now, ECO will collect the TCS. One thing, I am making the figure rounding it off, but please आप ये मत समझना ना मैं कुछ परसेंटेज गलत कैलकुलेट कर रहा हूं, नहीं, मैं सिर्फ आपको कॉन्सेप्ट डेवलप करा रहा हूं। तो रेट का जो परसेंटेज है, टीसीएस का जो परसेंटेज है, मैं एग्जैक्ट परसेंटेज नहीं ले रहा। आई एम सेइंग दैट से वैल्यू ऑफ द गुड्स इज 1000 रुपीज। ठीक है, प्लस 50 रुपीज टैक्सेस था। ठीक है, नाउ बी विल पे द पेमेंट ऑफ 1050। नाउ ईसीओ विल मेक द पेमेंट कंप्लीटली 1050 या कुछ माइनस करेगा? यू टेल मी, विल इट डिडक्ट सम अमाउंट? ईसीओ विल डिडक्ट सम अमाउंट? इफ यस देन व्हाट? क्या ईसीओ डिडक्ट करेगा कुछ अमाउंट? आंसर इज अगर यस है तो क्या चीज का करेगा? जस्ट टेल मी द नेचर ऑफ द डिडक्शन, नॉट टेल मी द अमाउंट। कितना अमाउंट होगा वो मैं नहीं पूछ रहा हूं, आई एम जस्ट आस्किंग कि व्हाट कुड बी द नेचर ऑफ द डिडक्शन व्हेन ईसीओ विल मेक द पेमेंट, विल ट्रांसफर द और विल रेमिट द अमाउंट टू द एक्चुअल सप्लायर। वो कितना रेमिट करेगा? कुछ डिडक्ट करेगा? अगर हां तो किस चीज का डिडक्ट करेगा? एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट सर। दो चीज का, what will be the taxability? Non-Indian. Sir, Saxena, Mr. Saxena, wait for some time because you are going non-Indian e-commerce operator. So it means your question would be shifted to the some OIDAR transaction, some other category of the transaction. Let me develop this concept, but I will definitely give the answer, but you have to wait at least थोड़ा टाइम वेट कीजिए, then we will discuss. क्वेश्चन अच्छा है आपका. I can say Amazon will deduct two amount. One is the TCS amount and second is its own commission. I am saying that its own commission, let's say rupees 10. Sorry, its TCS is rupees 10. Assume that TCS is rupees 10. And I am saying own commission is rupees 100. तो ये पूरा 100 माइनस करेगा या 100 प्लस जीएसटी माइनस करेगा? Will he reduce 100 from the total amount or will he reduce 100 plus GST? क्या वो सिर्फ 100 माइनस करेगा या 100 प्लस जीएसटी भी माइनस करेगा? एक बात तो मुझे समझ में आ गई, 1050 में टीसीएस का अमाउंट माइनस होगा एंड विच वी हैव एज्यूम्ड रुपीज 10. नाउ आई एम आस्किंग, वो जो कमीशन है उसका, लेट्स से इट इज 100 रुपीज, will he deduct only 100 or 100 plus GST? Absolutely correct. Sir, he will raise one tax invoice. He will raise one tax invoice to Mr. A for the commission, which is 100 rupees by charging the GST at the rate of 18%. So basically, he need to collect rupees 118 from Mr. A, which he will reduce from the total amount collected. तो यहां पर कितना माइनस करेगा? 118. बैलेंस अमाउंट ही विल रेमिट. बैलेंस अमाउंट ही विल रेमिट. Please tell me whether this question is clear or not. Because I'm going to ask one important thing. ये क्वेश्चन क्लियर है? ये क्वेश्चन में कोई डाउट नहीं है ना? अब एक चीज समझिएगा. Now I can say in this example, Amazon is registered in two different category of the GST. Amazon is registered under two different category. So he will have the two GST number. One GST number like a regular category of the GST registration. One category is for TCS category. That registration which is taken for the purpose of TCS, he will file GSTR 8 and pay rupees 10 to the government. When Amazon will pay rupees 10 to the government, he will specify the GST number of A. So A able to add, able to take, able to use this. I will specify the word use. Able to use against payment of taxes rupees 100. रुपीज 10 है, सॉरी, ये रुपीज 10 जो किसने कलेक्ट किया? टीसीएस ने काटा था ना, अमेजन ने काटा था ना टीसीएस. अमेजन हैज कलेक्टेड रुपीज 10 ऑफ टीसीएस. He will file, Amazon will file the GSTR rate. He will pay to the government, and now A able to use this rupees 10 against the liability. A क्या करेगा? इस 10 रुपीज को यूज कर सकता है फॉर द डिस्चार्जिंग ऑफ द लाइबिलिटी. इज दैट क्लियर? फर्स्ट कंफर्म कीजिए, इज दैट क्लियर? यू आर गिविंग द पार्शियल कंफर्मेशन, दैट इज नॉट करेक्ट. बिकॉज जब मैं इस पूरे एग्जाम्पल को ऐड कर दूंगा, या अगर टाइम परमिट किया तो जब हम लास्ट बड़े क्वेश्चन पे जाएंगे, हाउ यू विल रिस्पॉन्ड टू मी. तो मेरा ये रिक्वेस्ट है आपसे कि प्लीज गिव द कंफर्मेशन एट एवरी स्टेज. ठीक है. सो फॉर कमीशन in which he will have to take a regular category of registration, Amazon will file the GSTR 3B, GSTR 1, etc. and pay the taxes rupees, pay the taxes on rupees 100, that is rupees 80. He will pay the tax to the government. नाउ ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड. ए के पास में एक तो 18 का टैक्स इनवॉइस है और 18 रुपीज के टैक्सेस कंपोनेंट का इनवॉइस है. ए के पास एक इनवॉइस है कमीशन का जो अमेजोन से रिसीव हुआ. ए क्या करेगा इस 18 का? प्लीज टेल मी व्हाट ही विल डू. प्लीज टेल मी ए क्या करेगा इस 18 का? व्हाट ए विल डू? प्लीज टेल मी व्हाट ए विल डू दिस रुपीज 18 का. हाँ, ये बढ़िया पूछा प्रेरणा ने कि टीसीएस का आईटीसी मिलेगा क्या. मैं बताता हूं एक बार, बट पहले मुझे आप 18 रुपीज का आंसर दीजिए कि 18 का क्या करेगा ए. आईटीसी लेगा सर, सीधा सा बात है. हाँ, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. ए विल टेक द आईटीसी. थैंक यू. ए विल टेक द आईटीसी ऑफ रुपीज 18. प्लीज कंफर्म माई स्टेटमेंट वेदर ए विल टेक द आईटीसी ऑफ रुपीज 10 ऑल्सो. क्या ए 10 रुपए का भी आईटीसी लेगा? क्या ए 10 रुपए का भी आईटीसी ले सकता है? एज्यूमिंग ऑल द कंडीशन आर सेटिस्फाइड, क्या ए 10 रुपए का आईटीसी ले सकता है? क्या ए टेक द रुपीज 10 इन द इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट? क्या ए 10 रुपए को ऐड कर सकता है इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट में? परफेक्ट, परफेक्ट, बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत बढ़िया. तो फर्स्ट थिंग इज क्लियर दैट टीसीएस इज नॉट द आईटीसी. TCS is not the ITC. It means when A file the GSTR 3B, he will disclose the liability, he will disclose the ITC. अगर मैं लाइबिलिटी की बात करूं तो कैन आई से दैट द लाइबिलिटी ऑफ मिस्टर ए वुड बी ₹50। भाई जो ए ने बी को सप्लाई किया है, इसके ऊपर ए ने टैक्स इनवॉइस इश्यू किया, तो ए का जो टैक्स लाइबिलिटी है वो ₹50 होगा, ए का जो आईटीसी है वो ₹18 होगा। जीएसटीआर 3B में वो लाइबिलिटी कितनी दिखाएगा? ₹32। जीएसटीआर 3B में लाइबिलिटी कितनी दिखाएगा? ग्रॉस लाइबिलिटी 50, आईटीसी 18 एंड द टीसीएस ऑफ ₹10। There is a separate process in the GST portal by which he will add ₹10 in the ECL. कौन ऐड करेगा? ए। क्या करना है? एक छोटा सा ना एक सेपरेट प्रोसेस है, जीएसटी पोर्टल में लॉगिन करके वो सिंपली क्या करेगा? ही विल ऐड द अमाउंट ऑफ ₹10 इन द इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर। ना ये कैश में जब ऐड हो जाएगा ना, इसके बाद इसको किसी भी पर्पस के लिए यूज किया जा सकता है। सो इफेक्टिवली ही विल पे द कैश ऑफ ₹22। आईटीसी 18 का यूज किया, ₹10 कैश लेजर में यूज, जो ट्रांसफर किया टीसीएस को उसको यूज किया, एंड देयरफॉर आई कैन से द ए का फाइनल लाइबिलिटी वुड बी ₹22। ये एग्जांपल क्लियर है? यहां तक डिस्कशन क्लियर है? इज इट क्लियर? इज इट क्लियर टिल नाउ? इज इट क्लियर टिल नाउ? यहां तक क्लियर है ना पूरा एग्जांपल? ये मैं आपको लगभग एक क्वेश्चन वन जो है स्टडी मटेरियल में ऑलमोस्ट मिलता जुलता मैं आपसे क्वेश्चन करवा रहा हूं। फिगर चेंज है बट ऑलमोस्ट द कॉन्सेप्ट आर सेम। ठीक है, अब अगर मैं लाइबिलिटी की बात करूं, हाउ मच ईसीओ विल पे, हाउ मच अमेजोन विल पे टू द गवर्नमेंट। तो एक हमने बात किया टीसीएस का अमाउंट, हाउ मच? ₹10। ही विल फाइल द GSTR 8 एंड पे ₹10। ऑल्सो ही विल फाइल द GSTR 3B, और उसमें कितना लाइबिलिटी है? ₹18 का लाइबिलिटी। ही विल पे द सेम थ्रू GSTR 3B। In this case, he is registered in the different category TCS. In this case, he is registered in the GST in the different category as a regular category of the registration. ध्यान रखना एक बात कि अमेजोन को इस केस में 2 रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने पड़ेंगे। इज दैट क्लियर? अमेजोन को इस केस में 2 रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने पड़ेंगे, 1 अंडर टीसीएस कैटेगरी, 1 अंडर रेगुलर कैटेगरी। ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं। एक बात और पढ़ लेते हैं, देन विल मूव टू द स्टडी मटेरियल। देन विल मूव टू द स्टडी मटेरियल। विल मूव टू द स्टडी मटेरियल। Now I'm talking about the registration. In the section 24, I'm recalling the section 24. A is making the supply of the goods to Mr. B through Amazon. Then one mandatory registration is here, that Amazon has to take the registration under the TCS category. And one mandatory registration is here, A has to take the mandatory registration under the regular category. अभी मैंने गुड्स की बात की है. So if A make the supply of the goods through Amazon, then Amazon will take the registration mandatorily according to section 24 mandatory, और ए को भी क्या करना पड़ेगा, रेगुलर कैटेगरी में मैंडेटरी रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा. बेसिक थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट वुड नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल. बेसिक थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट वुड नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल एज ऑफ नाउ. सेकेंड पॉइंट में आता हूं. लेट्स से ए इज मेकिंग द सप्लाई ऑफ द सर्विस थ्रू ईसीओ टू मिस्टर बी. सेक्शन 24 में now let me divide in two category. Let me divide in two category. अगर ये 95 वाली सप्लाई है, अगर ये अदर देन 95 वाली सप्लाई है. मैं बात कर रहा हूं सर्विस की. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द सर्विस ट्रांजेक्शन. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द सर्विस ट्रांजेक्शन. ठीक है. अदर देन 95. If it is other than 95, then A is not covered by section 24 till threshold limit. So section 24, there is a notification which talks about A can take the basic benefit of 10 lakh, 20 lakh, whatever the case may be. And once the turnover cross the threshold limit, then only he has to take the registration. क्या मतलब हुआ कि if you read the section 23 and the respective notification 65 by 2017, it says that the A not required to take the registration till his turnover cross the threshold limit. Till his turnover cross the threshold limit. If it is crossing the threshold limit, A will take registration under regular category and issue will take registration under TCS category. क्लियर है ये वाली बात? लास्ट यहां तक पहले मुझे बता दो, इज इट क्लियर और एनी कंफ्यूजन? इज इट क्लियर और एनी कंफ्यूजन? ठीक है, ठीक है, मैं चेंज कर लूंगा, मैं येलो नहीं यूज करूंगा. ठीक है, मैं येलो नहीं करूंगा, अब मैं यूज नहीं करूंगा. ठीक है, ये वाला एग्जांपल क्लियर है ना? अदर देन 95 अगर सर्विस सप्लाई की जा रही है, देन द बेसिक थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट वुड बी अवेलेबल टू सप्लायर. He not required to take mandatory registration. ठीक है. Once the turnover cross the threshold limit, then only he has to take registration. But the registration would be under regular category and issue will take under TCS category. ठीक है. अब मुझे एक बात बताइए, अगर ये 95 का ट्रांजेक्शन होता तो यहां पर जो ईसीओ है और यहां पर जो ए है, वेदर इश्यू विल टेक द रजिस्ट्रेशन अंडर द टीसीएस कैटेगरी और अंडर रेगुलर कैटेगरी. एक बार बताइए, अगर ये 95 का ट्रांजेक्शन है तो ईसीओ जो रजिस्ट्रेशन लेगा वो रेगुलर कैटेगरी का लेगा या टीसीएस कैटेगरी का लेगा? In the last example, I have talked about if A, who is providing the service other than 95, means ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ऑफ पैसेंजर नहीं है, होटल नहीं है, कारपेंटर नहीं है, रेस्टोरेंट नहीं है, तो अदर देन 95 की अगर सर्विस है तो अगर ईसीओ के थ्रू की जाती है तो ही कैन एंजॉय द रजिस्ट्रेशन का बेसिक थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट. वंस द टर्नओवर क्रॉस द थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट, ए नीड टू टेक रजिस्ट्रेशन. ए विल टेक अंडर रेगुलर कैटेगरी and then ECO will take the under TCS category. क्या बात है, very nice. Here the e-commerce operator will take the registration under the TCS or regular. That is my question. Ravi, Muhammad Abdul, Prerna, I have received the 3 correct answers. Waiting for others. I have received the 3 correct answer. Waiting for others. So here he will take the regular category registration because he himself will be considered as deemed supplier. And if you refer the section 24, this category is covered under mandatory registration. This category is covered under mandatory registration. Okay. So registration I have also completed. Now let me move to the chapter. So now I have completed the base of this entire chapter. Now I can gradually move to the study material. यहाँ तक सब क्लियर? If you have any question, Prerna, Kirti, everyone is correct. Any question you have? Any question you have? You can ask at the same time. Now let me read the statutory provision. It talks about definition of e-commerce. Electronic commerce means supply of goods or services or both, including digital product over digital or electronic network. Okay. What is the definition of e-commerce operator? E-commerce operator means any person who owns, operate or manage. क्या चीज मैनेज करता है? डिजिटल या इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फैसिलिटी या कोई प्लेटफॉर्म फॉर ई कॉमर्स. मतलब ई कॉमर्स के लिए, इस पर्सन के लिए, जो भी पर्सन इलेक्ट्रॉनिक प्लेटफॉर्म, डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म फैसिलिटी ओन करता है या ऑपरेट करता है या मैनेज करता है, whether he is owning, operating or managing, then such platform would be called as e-commerce operator. ठीक है. Now deemed supplier I have clarified. Government on the recommendation of the council by notification. It means effective application of the 9(5) would be completed only when you have the notification. So therefore, I have told you the 4 categories of services. 4 categories of the services are being added in the 9(5) categories. Services. So I have used that goods cannot be under 9(5). It can only be services. Tax on intra. Why it is intra? Because we are reading the CGST Act. If you read the section 5, subsection 5 of IGST Act, you will find the word inter. It says the government on the recommendation of the council. Council means GST council. By notification, specify the category of the services. Tax on intra-state supplies of which shall be paid by the e-commerce operator if such services are supplied through it. And all the provision of this act shall apply to such e-commerce operator. That is the reason I have used the word deemed supplier. As if he is the supplier liable to pay the tax. That is the reason I told you that he will issue the tax invoice. That is the reason I told you that he will pay the tax to the government. क्योंकि ये कहता है कि मान लिया जाएगा as if he is the supplier. मतलब ऐसा मान लेंगे हम लोग, we will consider him as a supplier who is liable for paying the taxes. Now there is 2 provisos. This is the answer to the Saxena question. Provided that if ECO does not have the physical presence in India, taxable territory, and what is the meaning of taxable territory? India. Any person representing such ECO for any purpose in the taxable territory shall be liable to pay the tax. Let's say Ola Uber is outside Indian organization. They are operating, etc. Now, if that is the case, if commerce operator is located out of India, is an Indian outside Indian company, in that case, they have to appoint the representative. Any person who is the representative of the Ola Uber in India, he will be considered as supplier and he has to pay the tax. Now, if he does not have the physical presence plus does not have the representative, then the second proviso say he has to appoint one person in the taxable territory for the purpose of paying the tax, and such person shall be liable to pay the tax. If Saxena, are you there? I hope your doubt is clear. They have to find the representative in India. If not, then they have to appoint one person in India and he will pay the tax as if he is a supplier. I'm not reading section 5, subsection 5 because exactly same language. Now we need to understand TCS, collection of tax at source. Just tell me yes or no. Just tell me yes or no. If cash is not collected by Amazon from customer. Cash means cash or bank. It can be online payment also. Cash means money is paid to the Amazon. So if cash is not paid, I am saying if Amazon is not getting the amount, he has directly made the payment to the supplier, Mr. A. क्या इस केस में अमेजन को टीसीएस कलेक्ट करना है? If Amazon is not responsible for collection of money from recipient is directly making the payment to supplier. In this case, क्या TCS का provision applicable होगा on the Amazon? Whether TCS provision would be applicable on Amazon or not? The answer is no. Because the TCS would be collected only when Amazon is getting the amount. If let's say the business transaction is like OLX, whether OLX is not the electronic commerce operator, answer is yes, it is ECO. But क्या TCS का प्रोविजन OLX के ऊपर एप्लीकेबल है? अगर किसी ट्रांजेक्शन में OLX के माध्यम से कोई सेल कर रहा है, if anyone is selling the product through OLX, but customer is directly making the payment to the supplier, in that case, OLX will not be responsible for TCS under section 52 of GST. ये वाला बात क्लियर है? एक बार कंफर्म करो मुझे. प्लीज कंफर्म, इज दिस पॉइंट क्लियर टू ऑल? The example of OLX. The example of OLX is clear to all. एक बार कंफर्म करें. Fine. So now we are reading the further provision of the TCS. Notwithstanding anything contained to the contrary in this act, every ECO not being an agent shall collect amount at such rate not exceeding 1%, as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council on which value they have to collect, net value. Kitna rate? They have not specified exact rate. We are reading the CGST. And here if it is 1%, then 1 plus 1, 2%. Is it the rate of the TCS? No. ये रेट नहीं है टीसीएस का. तो क्या है सर? ये अपर लिमिट है. दिस इज द अपर लिमिट. दिस इज नॉट द एग्जैक्ट रेट. दे आर सेइंग नॉट एक्सीडिंग 1%. क्या rate? At such a rate which may be notified. So we have to see the notification that what is the rate notified for the purpose of TCS, and rate क्या notify हुआ 0.5% CGST plus 0.5% SGST and total is 1%. But if you see the act, section 52 is empowering that you can notify 1 plus 1 2%. कितना नोटिफाई हुआ है 0.5 and 0.5 टोटल 1%. किस वैल्यू पर डिडक्ट करेंगे कलेक्ट करेंगे नेट वैल्यू ऑफ टैक्सेबल सप्लाईज मेड थ्रू इट बाय अदर सप्लायर वेयर द कंसिडरेशन इज कलेक्टेड बाय द ऑपरेटर. ये बात भी क्लियर हो गई. वेयर द कंसिडरेशन is collected by the operator, then only it is applicable, otherwise not applicable. Explanation. What is the net value? Net value means the aggregate value of taxable supplies other than 9.5. Why they have excluded 9.5? Why they have excluded 9.5? Because we know on the 9.5 TCS का provision is not applicable. On the net value of taxable supplies, they have to exclude the 9.5. Why they have to exclude the 9.5? Because we know the section 52 will fail, will not be applicable on the 9.5 transaction. Other than services, ठीक है, made during any month by all registered person through operator reduced by the aggregate value of the taxable supply return. So let's say अगर A ने 1000 रुपए का सप्लाई किया है and out of that let's say 300 rupees का goods has been returned, तो TCS would be collected on 700 only. TCS would be collected by Amazon only 700. ठीक है. Power to collect the amount shall be without prejudice to any other mode of recovery. That is okay. The amount collected shall be paid to the government. कितना दिन के अंदर? How many days? Within 10 days after the end of the month in which the collection is made. Every operator who collect the amount shall furnish the statement GSTR 8. He will furnish the statement in the GSTR 8. What is the GSTR 8? A statement by which the Amazon containing the details of the outward supply, he will specify the details of all sales of goods, all sales of services, including the supply of the goods or services or both, return. क्यों दिखाना है रिटर्न को? So that we can calculate. So they can calculate what is the net value, and on the net value the TCS would be applied. बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत बढ़िया. So now it says that the 10th day we have to pay, that Amazon has to pay, provided that commissioner can reason to be recorded in writing extend the time limit. Provided further that any extension to time limit notified by the commissioner of the SGST or commissioner of UTGST shall be deemed to be notified by the commissioner. It means because in the GST we know there is a concept of CGST Act and there is a concept of SGST Act or UTGST Act. So the proviso says if SGST or UTGST ka commissioner has extended the time limit, it will be deemed that CGST ka commissioner has also extended. Deeming provision. Every operator, this is GSTR 9B, and it is not yet notified. It means if you talk about the Annual return is the 9B. Annual return is the 9B for the e-commerce operator on which TCS का provision is applicable. Every operator who collect the amount specified in the one shall furnish an annual statement in the GSTR 9B electronically containing the details of outward supplies, including the supplies returned and the amount collected under the said subsection during the financial year in such form, such manner before the 31st December after the end of the financial year. Again, same thing, commissioner can extend the timeline, and if it is extended by SGST or UTGST, it will be deemed that it has been extended by the CGST. If any operator, after furnishing the statement under subsection 4, it means GSTR 8. If any operator after furnishing the statement under subsection 4 discover any omission incorrect particular other than as a result of a scrutiny, audit, inspection, enforcement activity by the tax authority, he shall rectify such omission in the statement to be furnished for the month during which such omission are noticed, subject to the interest, if any. Provided that no rectification of any omission shall be allowed after 30th day of November following the end of the financial year or actual date of filing of annual return, whichever is earlier. My question to all of you, can you tell me 30 नवंबर का डेट हमने कहीं और भी पढ़ा है? Can you tell me we have discussed the 30th November का डेट somewhere else as well? We have discussed the 30th November ka date at some provision in some other chapter, at somewhere else we have discussed the same. Please tell me the two places where we have discussed the 30th November. मेरा आपसे सिंपल क्वेश्चन है कि ये 30 नवंबर का डेट हमने इस जीएसटी में मल्टीपल जगह डिस्कस किया है. कैन यू प्लीज हाईलाइट द टू सिचुएशन वेयर इन वी हैव डिस्कस्ड दिस 30th नवंबर का डेट? रवि राइट, प्रेरणा राइट, पार्शियली राइट, नॉट एनुअल रिटर्न. नहीं, एनुअल रिटर्न 31 दिसंबर है. क्रेडिट नोट ओके है बट नॉट इश्यू डिक्लेरेशन है. क्रेडिट नोट की अगर आप बात करेंगे, इफ यू रेफर द सेक्शन 34 सबसेक्शन 2, it is talking about the same timelines, 30th November or annual return, whichever is earlier. But please do not use the word issue. Please use the word declaration. There is a big difference which we had discussion. तो आप क्या करोगे? हाँ, सेक्शन 16 आईटीसी लेने का है. आईटीसी रिवर्सल का टाइमलाइन भी मोहम्मद, आईटीसी रिवर्सल इज इट 30th November? Very important point. Is it the for ITC reversal, let's say rule 40 to 43, क्या उसका टाइमलाइन 30 नवंबर है? रूल 40 to 43 का टाइमलाइन 30 नवंबर है क्या? एक बार चेक करना. In case of the reversal, Viraj, reversal, let's say we are talking about rule 40 to 43, correct? What is the timeline which we had to reverse? What is the last date to reclaim? In case of the rule 40 to 43, I'm talking about, I'm not talking about any other things. Chalo. There is some timeline, if I'm not wrong, 30th September due date of the month of the September or annual return, whichever is earlier. वहां पर अभी भी 30 सितंबर है. सितंबर मंथ का ड्यू डेट है. GSTR 3B of the September after following the end of the financial year, उसका ड्यू डेट और एनुअल रिटर्न whichever is earlier. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं. Then the supplier who has supplied the goods or services or both through operator shall claim the credit in the electronic cash ledger of the supplier who has supplied the goods or services or both through the operator shall claim the credit in the electronic cash ledger. So please do not treat this word credit as a ITC. इस credit word को आप ITC मत समझना. You please do not treat this word credit as ITC because credit in the cash ledger. It means I'm adding the amount in the cash ledger. Amount collected and reflected in the statement of operator furnished under GSTR 8 in such manner as may be prescribed. ठीक है. Any amount not below the rank of the deputy commissioner may serve the notice either before or during the course of any proceeding under this act requiring the operator to furnish such details relating to the supplies of goods or services both effected through such operator during any period, stock of the goods held by the supplier, making the supply through such operator in the godown or warehouse by whatever name called, managed by such operator and declared as an additional place of business. As may be specified in the notice. क्या notice issue कर सकता है? Let's read once again. Authority not below the rank of the deputy commissioner may serve the notice either before or during the course of any proceeding under this act, requiring the operator to furnish the details. क्या detail furnish करने के लिए? पहला, supplies of the goods which has been effected through this operator, and second, stock held by the supplier, making the supply through such operator in the godown. किसके गोडाउन में? इस ऑपरेटर के गोडाउन में. क्योंकि नॉर्मली क्या होता है, देखो, इफ यू सी द नॉर्मली लेट्स से यू वांट टू मेक द सप्लाई थ्रू अमेजॉन, तो क्या करेंगे? अमेजॉन विल गिव सम स्पेस टू यू विच यू कैन शो इन योर रजिस्ट्रेशन एज एन एडिशनल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस. गोडाउन किसका है? अमेजॉन का. दे विल गिव द एनओसी. You will report this additional place of the business in your registration, and now everything would be managed by the Amazon. ठीक है, as may be specified in the notice. Every operator to whom the notice has been served under subsection 12 shall furnish the required information within 15 working days. Okay, any person who failed to furnish the information, he would be liable to the penalty would be liable under section 122, which may extend to 25,000. Then it says the operator shall be allowed to furnish the statement after the shall not be allowed. So now what they are doing, they are saying that maximum you can file the GSTR 8 only for 3 years. Operator shall not be allowed to furnish the statement under subsection 4 after the expiry of 3 years from the due date of furnishing the said statement, provided that the government may, on the recommendation of the council notification, allow an operator or a class of the operator to furnish the statement even after the expiry of the said period of 3 years. So if there is a permission, then that is okay. Otherwise, operator cannot furnish the return. Which return? Under section 4, subsection 4. It means periodical return, GSTR 8. For the purpose of this section, the expression concerned supplier shall means the supplier of the goods or services or both making the supply through operator. Okay. Now let's read this. Form and manner of the submission of the statement of the supplies through e-commerce operator. Every ECU required to collect the TCS at section 52 shall furnish the statement GSTR 8. ठीक है. Then the detail furnished by the operator shall be made available electronically to each of the actual supplier on the common portal. Common portal मतलब gst.gov.in. After GSTR 8 for claiming the amount of the tax in the electronic cash ledger after validation. So there is some validation process. Once validation is being done, yes, it will be available. Now, I hope we can take the break of 10 minutes. Today we will take the break of 10 minutes only. So after the 10 minutes, I will ask certain question and then we will proceed further. So अशोक जी आप ब्रेक स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं आज 10 मिनट. Now, we were talking about e-commerce operator 95, other than 95 TCS, which we have discussed, correct? Now let me move further. Again, let me repeat the 95. In the 95, we have discussed that passenger no exclusion. In hotel accommodation, there is exclusion. In urban club, there is some exclusion. In other case, there is no exclusion, but then specified premises that language we should read. Service by way of transportation of passenger by radio taxi, motor cab, maxi cab, motorcycle, omnibus, or any other motor vehicle. It means if these services are being rendered through ECO, like Ola Uber, in that case, always e-commerce operator would be considered as deemed supplier. So please tell me, will it be with the TCS or without TCS? Will the TCS be applicable or not applicable? Kindly say yes or no. इस केस में क्या टीसीएस के प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल होंगे? क्विकली टेल मी, क्या टीसीएस के प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल होंगे? पॉइंट 12 प्लीज समराइज. We'll go back and then discuss. Right, answer is no. TCS not applicable in case of 9.5. Then here you need to understand why, because there is some exception. Let's read. Services by way of the providing accommodation in the hotel, inns, guest house, club, campus set, or other commercial places meant for residential or lodging purpose. Except, what is exception? Where the person supplying such services through e-commerce operator is liable for registration ends under 22 subsection 1. If e-commerce, if that particular supplier is liable for registration, in that case, the e-commerce operator would not be considered as deemed supplier. Is it clear? This point is clear, I hope. We have discussed a lot. Now, so I like to discuss only the exception. That is the reason we are reading. Services by way of housekeeping such as plumbing, carpenting, again except and same exception. If that plumber, carpenter is registered in 22 subsection 1, threshold limit cross होने के कारण वो registration हो गया उसका, then in that case the housekeeper, the ECO would not be considered as deemed supplier. In the restaurant, is there any exclusion? Yes. But here the different category of the exclusion, supply of the restaurant, but what is being excluded other than the service supplied by the restaurant, eating joint located at specified premises. What is the meaning of specified premises? Specified premises means premises providing hotel accommodation service having declared tariff of 7,500 per unit above rupees 7,500 per day or equivalent. What is the meaning of motor cab, maxi cab, motorcycle, etc.? They have defined. You can read the definition of radio taxi, maxi cab, motorcycle, etc. कोई क्वेश्चन है यहाँ पर? ठीक है. Now the provision applicable to the supplier liable to paying the tax. नहीं, ये हमने डिस्कस कर लिया. I'm not repeating once again. I'm not at all repeating. In the last 15 minutes, quick round of the question answer, I will revise the entire chapter in as usual. Like we are reading every chapter in the same fashion. I will ensure to revise entire this particular chapter in the last 15 minutes. Be ensured to be available to make your presence in the last 15 minutes. More important. Namrata is saying that please explain 12 number point. I think 50. मैं एक मिनट जाता हूँ. Let me go. I think you're talking about this point, right? Which 12? This notice wala point. Where will be tariff declared? Nee. See, you are staying in the hotel, correct? So they are declaring the tariff. Tariff means that charges taken by the hotel. So let's say you are going to the Taj Hotel. They are charging 8,000. So in that hotel, if there is some restaurant and they are also providing food through Zomato, then Zomato would not be responsible because the accommodation, the restaurant is located in the specified premises. वो होटल जिसका डिक्लेयर्ड टैरिफ, डिक्लेयर्ड मतलब जो होटल चार्ज करता है, जिसका रूम रेंट एक दिन का 7,500 से ज्यादा है, 7,500 से ज्यादा है, दैट इज कंसिडर्ड एज स्पेसिफाइड प्रीमाइजेस. ठीक है, नाउ क्लियर इन ब्रेक. ओके, परफेक्ट, नो प्रॉब्लम, थैंक यू. तो मैं अभी वापस, ठीक है, मैं वापस उसमें जा रहा हूं. परफेक्ट, थैंक यू यार. अभी ये हमने डिस्कस कर लिया, ये हमने डिस्कशन कर लिया, और ये सारे पॉइंट मैं रिवाइज करवा दूंगा. ध्यान रखना, लास्ट 15 मिनट में सारे पॉइंट हमें ना एक रिवीजन करेंगे बहुत अच्छे तरीके से आज. ये क्या पॉइंट है? So that is payment of the tax on notified services is not allowed through ITC of ECU. It has to be paid in cash only. ठीक है. Now we need to read the circular 167. एक मिनट वो देखते हैं कहां पे. ठीक है, circular 167. ये समझिए, मल्टी मॉडल e-commerce, multiple e-commerce in a single transaction. Suppose one seller is there, he is making the supply through ECO1. ECO1 is giving the same to the ECO2, and ECO2 is giving the transaction or giving the supply to the buyer. Then question was raised that whether ECO1 has to comply with the TCS or ECO2 had to comply with the TCS. That question was raised. So TCS is to be collected by that ECO. TCS का provision, section 52 का provision would be applicable on that ECO who is connected with seller. Who is responsible to make the payment to the seller? In this example, ECO1 is making the payment to the seller. See, buyer will make the payment to the ECO2. ECO2 will transfer the payment to ECO1. ECO1 will make the payment to the supplier. The e-commerce operator who is responsible or who is giving the payment to the seller, that ECO would be covered under section 52. So इस एग्जाम्पल में खाली जो किताब, so the example which is being quoted in the in the study material, so they have given ECO2 and here they have given ECO1. So ठीक है ना. So ECO1 will not have any information on the supplier. TCS is to be collected by that ECO who is making the payment to the supplier. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं. Composite taxpayer cannot make supply the service through an ECO. Composition. If you read the composition, in the composition chapter, I think you have discussed that service cannot be supplied through ECO. The dealer, composite dealer cannot make the supply the service through e-commerce operator. Okay. But yes, they have made the relaxation for the goods. Yes, you can supply the goods within the state only. You can make the supply the goods. So they are saying composition taxpayer cannot make the supply of the service through ECO 10 to D. However, the composition taxpayer can make the supply of the goods through ECO. As a corollary, TCS can be collected only in respect of the supply of the goods made by the composition taxpayer through an ECO. Rate notified 0.5 CGST, 0.5 SGST. Net value will be calculated GSTN level. Okay, what is the meaning of net value? Aggregate value, the taxable supplies minus return. So, but other than 9.5, which we have discussed also. Okay. TCS is to be collected on net value of taxable supplies. So therefore, we can say that TCS is not required to be collected on exempt supply. Okay. TCS is not required to be collected on the supply on which recipient is required to pay the tax under reverse charge basis. Okay. TCS is not liable to be collected on import of goods or services. TCS is not liable to be collected on import of services since these are the supplies on which recipient is required to pay the tax under RCM. As far as import of the goods is concerned, since same would fall in the domain of custom, it would be outside the purview of TCS. Okay. So GSTR 8, we have discussed what are the content. They have given the content, details of the supplies attracting TCS, table 3, table 4, amendment to the details of the supply attracting TCS in the earlier statement, table 5, details of interest on account of the late payment of TCS, table 6 and table 7 is the payment of tax. What is the last date? 10th of next month. What is the late fees? Under section 47, the late fees is rupees 200 for every day during which such failure continue, and upper limit is 10,000, 5,000 CGST and 5,000 SGST, whichever is lower. This is important question. So whether nil GSTR rate need to be filed in case where there is no liability in a tax period, no TCS liability in a tax period. So it says no, it's not mandatory. So the GSTR 8 has to be furnished only when you have the liability of TCS. But when you read section 37, when you read section 39, and then at that point of time, you will understand that the GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, CMP 08 is required to be submitted nil also, even if there is no output supply. मतलब वहां पर आपको nil भी फाइल करना पड़ेगा if there is no output supply then also. ठीक है. Maximum time limit 3 year. Which annual return? GSTR 9B. Interest on non-collection of TCS. Yes, it is applicable. Penalty 122 clause 6. So, not below the rank of the deputy commissioner may serve the notice requiring ECU to furnish the details of their supplies of the goods or services of both as well as the stock of the goods held by the supplier. Power conferred on the ECU to collect the TCS is without prejudice to other mode of the recovery from ECU. The power of the ECU is restricted only to the extent of TCS. An officer not below the rank of the deputy commissioner can issue the notice asking him to furnish the detail relating to the volume and stock. The ECO is required to furnish the detail within 15 working days. In case ECO fail to furnish, the liability would be under section 122, that is up to 25,000. Payment of the TCS by ECO not allowed through ITC. This implies that TCS has to be paid in cash only. We have discussed earlier also. Now, this circular we have to read in detail. One clarification on the e-commerce operator transaction. As seen earlier, the supply of the restaurant service, other than the service supplied by restaurant, supply of the restaurant service other than the service supplied by the restaurant which is located in the specified premises are covered in the 9.5. Correct? We have discussed. Circular 167 has clarified the following issue with respect to that said services. ECO. Not to collect TCS in respect of restaurant services so notified. We are also knowing that if it is covered in the 9.5, then it is not, it will be outside the purview of the TCS. Correct? ये बात तो सबको clear हो चुका है ना? ECO will no longer be required to collect the TCS and furnish GST rate in respect of restaurant service since it paid the tax on the 9.5. ECO not required to take separate registration for paying the tax supplied through them. An ECO has already registered with Rule 8. With Rule 8 means under the regular category. If he is registered under the regular category, then he will not be required to take registration again for 9.5. Why it is so? Because if that e-commerce operator are registered for their own supply, okay, then in the 9.5, because section 9 subsection 5 says such e-commerce operator would be considered as if he is making the supply. Correct. So in this case also, they are regular category of registered person. They are considered as a regular category and he has already taken the registration. Therefore, they are saying no need to take additional registration if they are already registered under the regular category. ECO to pay tax on restaurant services supplied through them by an unregistered person. ECO to pay the tax on restaurant service supplied through them by an unregistered person. Now, what is the case? ECO to pay the tax will be liable to pay the GST on the restaurant supplied through them, including unregistered person. So, one has asked the question, right? If I'm not wrong, Namrata, आपने पूछा था ना क्या logic है इसका? You have asked that, na? What is the logic? Now you will be able to understand. One logic of 9.5. One logic of 9.5. Can anybody tell me that I'm not talking about this. Now I'm asking simple question to all of you. Whether every person who is doing the business is required to take registration or there is some threshold limit. क्या सभी पर्सन को रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ता है जीएसटी में? नॉर्मली पूछ रहा हूं. आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट एनी ईसीओ, आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट एनी 9.5. नहीं, आई एम आस्किंग नॉर्मल क्वेश्चन टू ऑल. क्या कोई थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट एक्ट में दी हुई है या मुझे ₹1 का सप्लाई करने पर भी रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा विद इन स्टेट? What happened? Sir, there is threshold limit. See, in the section 22 subsection 1, there is some talking about the threshold limit. They are talking about some threshold limit. Like 20 lakh, 10 lakh or 40 lakh something. इसका मतलब if my turnover is below that 19 lakh or 9 lakh or let's say 39 lakh, whatever the case may be, do I need to pay the GST? If I am doing the transaction below threshold limit, do I need to pay the GST? Answer is, अगर आप registered हैं because of the threshold limit, then only you need to pay the GST or because of any other reason. But what happened in the, so if I am having one restaurant, let's say Mr. A is again unregistered person, he is supplying the food. It's, so you are going to the, let's say he is samosa wala. Mr. A एक समोसा वाला है, आप समोसा खरीदते हैं इससे और ₹12 पे करते हैं, विल ही पे द टैक्स? इसकी टर्नओवर बिलो थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट है. इसकी टर्नओवर बिलो थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट है, whether he will pay the GST or not. Just asking simple question, if any person purchasing the samosa from unregistered supplier, will he pay the GST? Answer is no, he will not pay the GST. Sir, क्या silly question आप पूछ रहे हैं? See, now if it is covered in the 9(5) and on the 9(5) they are saying Zomato will be considered as deemed supplier because Zomato is mandatory registration. 9(5) is covered under the mandatory registration. So the government are getting the tax on every rupee, on every supply, even if the actual supplier is unregistered. 9(5) से क्या हुआ? 9(5) से क्या हुआ? टैक्स का एनबिट इंक्रीज हो गया. Even if the restaurant wala, even if the dhaba wala is unregistered now, but the government is getting the taxes because of 9(5). Are you clear about this point or not? Big understanding or big reasoning. It is my feeling that it could be one of the big reason why to introduce the 9(5). Correct na? So I think Namrata, now your question is being completely answered by me. You have asked earlier, so वहां पर मैंने कुछ partial reply दिया था because you are in the class. So I am giving the balance part of the reply. I hope now the all angle are being touched. All are clear. Correct? What is the logic of the 9(5)? ठीक है ना? चलो now let's say ये बहुत बड़ा रीजन है, मतलब ये आपको समझना पड़ेगा. दिस यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड. सी बिकॉज यू ऑल आर फाइनल स्टूडेंट, सो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द लॉजिक एज वेल. थैंक यू. नाउ अब नेक्स्ट पॉइंट पर आते हैं. सप्लाई ऑफ द रेस्टोरेंट सर्विसेज टू बी इंक्लूडेड इन द एग्रीगेट turnover of the person supplying restaurant services through ECU. Aggregate turnover of the person supplying the restaurant services shall be computed in accordance with the Section 2 Clause 6 and shall include the aggregate value of the supply made by the restaurant through ECU. Accordingly, for threshold consideration or any other purpose in the CGST Act, the person providing the restaurant through ECU shall account for such services in his aggregate turnover. That is the clear, but yes, it has been explained. The restaurant service provided through ECU not to be considered inward supply for ECU. Big confusion. The people are asking A is a restaurant and making the supply through Zomato to Mr. B. क्या Zomato इसके ऊपर टैक्स पे करेगा? A की जो सप्लाई है, तो इस ट्रांजेक्शन पर कौन टैक्स पे करेगा? वो विल पे द टैक्स ऑन दिस ट्रांजेक्शन. व्हाई आई एम सेइंग सो? बिकॉज we know that tax invoice will be issued by the Zomato to be correct. 9(5) is deemed. 9(5) is the deemed supplier. Zomato is considered as a deemed supplier, so the tax invoice will be issued by the Zomato. Correct? No doubt. ना? कोई डाउट नहीं इसमें. The problem is A to Zomato, ये ट्रांजेक्शन क्या है? What is this transaction? And just now we have discussed that it will be included in the aggregate turnover of A. Obviously, it will be included in the aggregate turnover of the Zomato also, no doubt. But is it one supply or two supply? See, I am talking about something which is not there in the study material. I am talking about logical point with all of you. अभी मैं सिर्फ लॉजिकल पॉइंट की बात कर रहा हूं आप सभी के साथ में. ठीक है, एक अच्छा पॉइंट डिस्कस करते वापस हम इस पेज पर आते हैं. जो 9(5) है, is it a single supply or is it two supply? मतलब why I am single or double? Why I am saying so? Because A is giving to the Zomato and Zomato is making the supply to B. Is it a single transaction or two transaction? Question number 1. You try to answer. You give the answer. Is it a single transaction or is it a two transaction? First is A to Zomato and then Zomato to B. See, if you read the language of section 9.5, they are saying if the services has been supplied by A to B through Zomato, then it will be considered that Zomato himself is the actual supplier instead of A. Correct? I'm molding the language to the basic understanding. So if I read the 9.5, what is the 9.5? They are saying A, you are not the responsible. Now we are shifting the responsibility to the Zomato. So actually it is a single supply. It is a single supply. Now supply single, instead of A paying the taxes, the Zomato is paying the taxes. What happened? But please note, the A to Zomato is not inward supply of Zomato. It is not inward supply of Zomato. It is a single transaction, not inward supply of Zomato. But this sale will be counted in the A ka turnover as well as Zomato ka turnover. It is a single transaction. This transaction is not the inward supply of the Zomato. But again, for the purpose of aggregate turnover, it will be added in the A and also it will be added in the Zomato. What it says, let's read the language. They are saying ECO are not the recipient of the restaurant services supplied through them, since they are not input service to ECO. Since these are not the input service to the ECO, it is not the supply by A to ECO. No. These are not to be reported as inward supply, which is liable to be reverse charged in GSTR 3B. Indeed, they are reported as outward supply in the GSTR 3B. So, agar A registered hai, is example mein, if in this example, A is registered and Zomato is, obviously, they have to take registration. So, because A is registered, Zomato is registered. A will report the same as exempt supply in the GSTR 1. And recently, they have made separate table in the GSTR 3B. Earlier, we were have to club in the exempt supply in the GSTR 3B, but recently they have made separate table. But actually it is not exempt supply. अगर ये exempt नहीं तो कहां report करेगा A? Because A का outward supply तो है, तो A कहां report करेगा? For the purpose of reporting, it has been clarified that it has to be reported by A in the exempt and in the GSTR 1. And by A in the GSTR 3B. A 3B में कहां रिपोर्ट करेगा? पहले वो exempt में रिपोर्ट करता था, अब उसके लिए एक सेपरेट टेबल बना दी. But when the Zomato will report the same in the R1 and 3B, because it is taxable supply, he will pay the tax. He will issue the tax invoice. It will be the taxable supply which has to be reported in the 1 and 3B both. And also he has to pay the taxes. Clear है ना यहाँ पर? Is it clear ना? ये clear अभी तक बात? Is it any doubt? मजा आया ना चैप्टर में? एंजॉय द डिस्कशन टुडे ना? वेरी प्रैक्टिकल, बहुत प्रैक्टिकल चैप्टर है ये. जस्ट कंफर्म, एंजॉयड और नॉट? प्रैक्टिकल कॉन्सेप्ट का चैप्टर है ये पूरा. Reversal of the proportionate ITC on input goods and services not required by ECO. A reversal of proportionate ITC not required by ECO. ECO provide their own service as electronic platform and an intermediary for which it would acquire the input and input service on which ECO avail the ITC. ECO provide their own services as e-commerce platform and an intermediary for which it would acquire input and input service on which ECO will avail the ITC. What is the own service? This is commission fees, because ECO, if the restaurant is using the e-commerce platform, then obviously Zomato will charge something, commission fees, percentage, etc. So that commission is chargeable. So ECO can utilize the ITC for the payment of the GST on the services provided by the ECO on its own account, say to a restaurant. Now here we are talking about ECO to A. Situation in this regard remain unchanged even after ECO is liable to pay the tax on restaurant. ECO would be liable to ITC as before. ECO would be eligible. Accordingly, it is clarified that ECO shall not be required to reverse the ITC on account of the restaurant service on which it pay the GST in the section 95. 95 में proportionate reversal नहीं करना है. However, it may also be noted that on restaurant services so notified, ECO shall pay the entire GST liability in cash. No ITC could be utilized for the payment of the GST on restaurant supplied through ECO. देखो दो अलग अलग बातें की है. I hope it is clear. One is ECO to Mr. B. One is ECO to Mr. A. One is A to ECO. Correct. 3 ट्रांजेक्शन हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. We are discussing about 3 transaction. A is making the supply to ECO. It is not at all inward supply of ECO on which RCM is applicable. ECO make the supply to B. Yes, it is. He is liable to pay the tax because because of 95, and this entire liability has to be discharged in cash. That is clear. Now, when ECO raise the commission invoice to A, he will charge full tax, whatever the rate, and he can enjoy the ITC for the payment of this particular supply. So, इसके लिए वो ITC की बात कर रहा है. इसके लिए ये कह रहा है कि there is no proportionate reversal applicable on the ECO. There is no proportionate reversal applicable on the ECO. However, this liability has to be discharged in cash only. Is it clear? बहुत बड़ा point है. Is it very bigger point? But I hope it is clear to all. हाँ, A को टैक्स नहीं पे करना. For A, it's like an exempt supply. Then for Zomato, output will be high compared to input. मोहम्मद ये बात समझा नहीं यार. Can you please repeat again? I'll wait, not move to the chapter because there is slightly delay in putting the chat and receiving the chat payment. When you put and it is being received, slight delay. So I'm waiting for your point. Then I will move to the another point. Muhammad Abdul Rahim, you have asked very important question. मैं repeat कर दूंगा, कोई दिक्कत नहीं. मैं repeat कर दूंगा नम्रता, but let me see the point raised by the Muhammad. Just allow me 1 minute and I will repeat the entire point. मुझे सिर्फ ये समझ में नहीं आ रही. Zomato का output will be very high compared to input. Is it because that outward supply जी को restaurant वाली वो tax pay कर रहा है? Is it because, right? See, outward supply, मान लो मैं Zomato हूं तो मैं एक तो 95 वाली सप्लाई के ऊपर टैक्स पे कर रहा हूं और एक मैं कमीशन के ऊपर टैक्स पे कर रहा हूं. एंड बिकॉज इट इज नॉट कंसिडर्ड माय इनवर्ट सप्लाई जो मुझे रेस्टोरेंट ने दिया है, सो इट विल नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड एज इनवर्ट सप्लाई. सो मेरा आउटपुट हाई है. इज इट बिकॉज यू आर सीइंग सो? मेरा आउटपुट हाई है. इज इट बिकॉज यू आर सीइंग सो? Namrata, you have raised one concern. ठीक है. So I am saying A to Zomato and Zomato to B. यहां Zomato will raise the tax invoice to A for ₹100 by charging the GST 18, total 118. And Zomato, because it is outward taxable supply, so he can enjoy the ITC. He can eligible to take the ITC. This point is clear. अभी मैं 2 या 3 पार्ट में आपको एक्सप्लेन करूंगा. But first tell me, is this point clear? Very simple. ये तो बहुत सिंपल पॉइंट है. ये क्लियर हो गया. हाँ, मोहम्मद अब्दुल एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. यस यस यस. थोड़ा हाई रहेगा कम. एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. ठीक है. अब now they are saying that there is no requirement to reverse the proportionate ITC. So the point why the proportionate ITC ka point is being arised. You remember the rule 40 to 43. If I am making some taxable supply and if I am doing some exempt supply, then I am eligible to take the ITC to the extent of taxable supply. So this point it has been clarified because 5% ka rate is without ITC. If you see the restaurant, 5% ka rate is without ITC. They are saying there is no problem. This ITC, there is no problem. He is not required to reverse proportionately. He is not required to reverse proportionately. That is the one. Let me read again. Let me read again. So, ECO provide their own service. 100 रुपए वाला invoice plus 18% GST, total 118. For which it would acquire some ITC, on which ECO avail the ITC. Because he will develop the platform. Suppose I am a Zomato, I have developed my platform. So that particular input goods, input service, whatever it is there, my outward supply is fully taxable. I will utilize my full ITC. I will utilize my full ITC. Please note, see, now we can also see, we can also treat that because 5% is without ITC and according to the rule 40 to 43, without ITC supply will be considered as exempt supply. So we can say now, we can say that Zomato is basically making the taxable supplies to the extent of commission income. And he is providing the exempt supply to the extent of restaurant service 5% without ITC. So this point has been clarified. It is only shifting the responsibility on this Zomato. It is not that Zomato is making their own taxable supply. No, because of the 9 subsection 5, by virtue of the 9.5, the responsibility has been deferred on Zomato. But it is not that Zomato is making the taxable exempt supply to the extent of 5% of 9.5 and he has to apply the rule 42-43. इसको full ITC मिलेगा, no requirement of reversal. Because if you actually see, the Zomato is making the 2 supply. Zomato is doing the 2 supply. If I will see, one is taxable and one is exempted. Why exempted? Because restaurant 5% is without ITC. Then the question may come, whether rule 40 to 43 would be applicable on Zomato. The clarification, no, not applicable. Is it clear? ये वाला पार्ट क्लियर है. बड़ा टफ, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है, बहुत ब्यूटीफुली इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है. सब लोग हैं या नहीं है? मोहम्मद अब्दुल रिप्लाई आ रहा है, नम्रता का रिप्लाई आ रहा है, कीर्ति, विराज, प्रेरणा, गीता, all are there or not? Are you there or not? लॉट ऑफ कंफ्यूजन सर। अच्छा चलिए यार, ऐसा बात है, वापस पढ़े एक बार। अब्दुल अब्दुल इसी पॉइंट में ना, अब्दुल इस पॉइंट में कंफ्यूजन है जो हम अभी बात करें, इस पॉइंट में कंफ्यूजन है, इज इट? जो पॉइंट हम अभी डिस्कशन करें इसमें कंफ्यूजन है। मैं एक बार रिपीट करने के लिए तैयार हूं, मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, आराम से चलते हैं। वी विल कंप्लीट द चैप्टर, इट्स ऑलमोस्ट डन, चैप्टर कंप्लीट है ऑलमोस्ट, कुछ बचा हुआ नहीं है। कंफ्यूजन है तो मैं रिपीट कर दूंगा, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। जस्ट एक बार मुझे घूम गए इस टॉपिक में, ऐसा मत करो बच्चा। देखो मैंने, देखो क्यों मैंने स्टार्टिंग 1 आवर मैंने चैप्टर की रीडिंग स्टार्ट नहीं की, बिकॉज आई नो दैट पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ कंफ्यूजन। ठीक है, तो एक बार हम वापस से स्टार्ट करें। अभी अभी प्रेरणा, गीता, विश्वास करो लास्ट 15-20 मिनट हम जब देंगे ना, तो वापस आप जो आंसर देंगे ना उससे अपना पूरा चैप्टर क्लियर हो जाएगा। रेस्ट टू बी श्योर यू स्टे टिल 9। लास्ट रिवीजन में आपका ये सारे कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर हो जाएंगे। एक बार मोहम्मद का एक बार पॉइंट में क्लियर कर देता हूं, क्योंकि मोहम्मद को ये अभी भी कंफ्यूजिंग है इस पे। ठीक है, एक बार बात करते हैं। मोहम्मद अभी भी कंफ्यूजन है तो बता देना मेरे को, ठीक है? विल डिस्कस वंस अगेन। देख, reversal of the proportionate ITC required by ECU. Now this ECU, who is providing the restaurant, which is considered as exempt supply, because 5% without ITC is exempt supply. So the normally, I'm not talking about, let's remove the ECU. Let's remove the ECU. Suppose, let's say I am providing two supply. One is without ITC, one is with ITC. So do I need to reverse proportionate ITC or not? मैं अगर कोई सप्लाई कर रहा हूं, एक विद आईटीसी की, एक विदाउट आईटीसी की है, तो यू विल से टू मी ना कि दैट विदाउट आईटीसी द रूल 42 वुड बी एप्लीकेबल एंड यू नीड टू डू द रिवर्सल। यस और नो? पहला ये बात क्लियर करो मुझे। फर्स्ट टेल मी दिस पॉइंट, इज इट करेक्ट और नॉट, और इज इट क्लियर और नॉट? हाँ, ये बात क्लियर है। अब लेट्स से मैं मैं खुद दो सप्लाई कर रहा हूं, एक है विद आईटीसी, एक है विदाउट आईटीसी। देन यू विल से, सपोज मैंने अपना प्लेटफॉर्म तैयार किया है, लेट्स से अभी तक मैं ईसीओ पर नहीं गया हूं। सी, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू ईसीओ बिकॉज मैं इसको अलग तरीके से एक्सप्लेन करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं आपको। ठीक है, अब मैंने अपना एक ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर, मैंने एक प्लेटफॉर्म बनाया, एक वेबसाइट बनाई। अब उस वेबसाइट से मैं दो तरह के सप्लाई कर रहा हूं, 5% विदाउट आईटीसी एंड 12% और 18% विद आईटीसी। अगेन यू विल से, सर जितना भी डेवलपमेंट पे आपने एक्सपेंडिचर किया है, यू नीड टू रिवर्स प्रोपोर्शनेट आईटीसी टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ 5%। एग्रीड? एग्रीड ना? इस बात पर एग्री कर रहे हैं कि भाई टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ 5% आपको रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा ना, बिकॉज इट इज एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई। इट इज एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई, मुझे रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा रूल 42-43 के कारण। सी, एक पॉइंट तो क्लियर है ना आप लोगों को, विदाउट आईटीसी वाली जो सप्लाई होती है ना, सप्लाई विच इज विदाउट आईटीसी, इट विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज एग्जेम्प्टेड सप्लाई। सो अगेन मैंने वेबसाइट बनाई है, तो वेबसाइट मेरे लिए इनपुट सर्विस है, तो आई नीड टू रिवर्स बिकॉज आई एम मेकिंग टू सप्लाई। अब वापस वही क्वेश्चन, नाउ देर आर टू वे टू लुक 95 सप्लाई। एक वे क्या हो सकता है, फर्स्ट वे क्या हो सकता है 95 की सप्लाई को देखने के लिए, देखने का, जोमेटो इज बेसिकली डूइंग टू सप्लाई। वन इज 18% कमीशन वाला एंड वन इज 5% रेस्टोरेंट वाला विदाउट आईटीसी। सो इट इज एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई, it is taxable supply, correct? And therefore they need to reverse proportionate ITC whatever, because they have developed so much platform, so they have to reverse proportionate ITC. सेकेंड वे क्या है मैंने आपको क्या कहा था, ए टू जोमेटो एंड जोमेटो टू बी, इज इट टू सप्लाई? नो सर, ये एक ही सप्लाई है. इट इज नॉट द सप्लाई ऑफ जोमेटो एट ऑल. इट इज नॉट द सप्लाई ऑफ जोमेटो एट ऑल. इट इज द सप्लाई ऑफ ए टू बी. खाली टैक्स पे करने की जिम्मेवारी, द रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टू पे द टैक्स इज शिफ्टेड ऑन जेड जोमेटो. So therefore, the circular is clarified. It is not inward supply of Zomato. And they have also clarified no requirement of proportionate ITC because Zomato is basically making only one supply of 18% commission. But ये रेस्टोरेंट वाले के ऊपर तो सिर्फ इसको मीडिएटर को डीम्ड सप्लायर बना दिया, ओनली फॉर tax responsibility, only for compliances, so he can enjoy the full ITC. There is no problem at all. अब्दुल एक बार कंफर्म करना. देख एक बात मैं सभी से कहता हूं, अगर कंफ्यूजन है ना वापस पूछ लेना, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. आई विल ट्राई टू एक्सप्लेन इन अनदर पैटर्न ऑल्सो समटाइम. जैसा प्रियंका बोल रही है, प्रेरणा बोल रही है यूटर्न पे यूटर्न आ रहा है, ये चैप्टर ऐसा है. व्हाट इज द लॉजिक ऑफ इंक्लूडिंग इन द एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर? एक का तो टर्नओवर तो है ही है ना. सी टैक्स की जिम्मेवारी शिफ्ट की है जोमेटो के ऊपर, बट ए का तो टर्नओवर है ही है ना. इट विल बी काउंटेड एज ए का टर्नओवर, राइट? And we also know even exempt supply would be considered as, would be added in the aggregate turnover. Exempt supply भी तो ऐड करते हैं aggregate turnover. So that is the logic. GST to be paid by the supplier on services not notified under. हाँ, ये तो बात क्लियर है ना, इसमें तो कोई डाउट ही नहीं है. लेट्स से दैट apart from four services, if the service provider is making the supply through ECO, who will pay the tax? Obviously, actual service provider will pay the tax. ECO to raise the invoice in respect of the restaurant supplied through ECO, right? Billing in case of the restaurant and goods other than restaurant being sold by the restaurant. Yeah, that is important one. Let's read. Now, there can be a situation where restaurant services and goods or services other than restaurant are being sold by a restaurant to a customer under the same order. So A has received the order from B on Zomato. He has received one order for restaurant, and he has received, let's say, some goods also. Then in that case, 9(5) किसके ऊपर एप्लीकेबल होगा? ओनली टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ रेस्टोरेंट. ओनली टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ रेस्टोरेंट ना. 9(5) तो पूरे ट्रांजेक्शन पर तो एप्लीकेबल नहीं है ना. अगर मान लो एक गुड्स का भी सप्लाई करता है थ्रू जोमेटो ओनली, लेट्स से, और एक सिंगल टैक्स इनवॉइस बनाया है, तो उस केस में कैसे होगा? क्या होगा उस केस में? दैट हैज बीन क्लैरिफाइड दैट अगर रेस्टोरेंट एंड गुड्स या रेस्टोरेंट प्लस अदर देन रेस्टोरेंट आर बीइंग सोल्ड बाय द रेस्टोरेंट टू द कस्टमर इन द सेम ऑर्डर, द क्वेश्चन अराइज एज टू हु शैल बी लायबल फॉर रेजिंग द इनवॉइस इन दैट केस. Considering the liability to pay the GST on supplies other than restaurant through ECO and other compliances under the GST, भाई सिर्फ 9(5) के लिए तो ECO लाइबल है. 9(5) के लिए तो ECO लाइबल है. If it is other than 9(5), will the ECO make the tax invoice? Answer is no. तो क्या एडवाइस किया इन्होंने? ECO raise separate bill on the restaurant service in such case where ECO provide other supplies to the customer under the same order. अगर ऐसा कोई सिचुएशन है तो प्लीज इंश्योर दैट टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ 9(5) transaction, ECO has to raise the tax invoice. ये इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है, ठीक है। Regarding the registration, a person required to deduct the TCS, deduct the TDS under section 51 government wala or 52 e-commerce operator wala shall electronically submit an application in REG 7. Now this point is important. 1A, what is the 1A? Rule 12 sub rule 1A says a person applying the registration for TDS or TCS in a state or UT where he does not have the physical presence shall mention the name of the state or UT in the part A. So in the registration REG 01, there are two parts, part A and part B. Suppose one ECO who is having office in Gurgaon, Haryana, but he has to take registration in, let's say, Rajasthan also, because there is some TCS ka liability. He has to take registration in every state or UT, even if he does not have the physical presence. So slight relaxation has been given to ECO. Suppose Rajasthan में इसका कुछ भी नहीं है, कोई fixed place of business भी नहीं है, कैसे लेगा registration? They are saying, sub rule 1 is saying that in the part A, mention the name of Rajasthan, but in the part B, name of the state or union territory in which the principal place of the business is located, that is Gurgaon. No problem. The proper officer may grant the registration after due verification certificate in RG 6 within a period of 3 working days, whereon a request made in writing by a person to whom a registration has been granted under sub rule 2 or upon an inquiry pursuant to any other proceeding under this act, the officer is satisfied that a person to whom the RG 6 has been issued is no longer liable to cancellation of registration. Done. Chapter is done. I will ask multiple point. So before that, let me. गुड्स के केस में उसका टैक्स इनवॉइस काम आएगा. सो उस केस में अगर ऐसा होता है तो क्या होगा? देयर हैज टू बी द टू टैक्स इनवॉइस. ए हैज टू रेज द टैक्स इनवॉइस ऑन बी फॉर गुड्स बाय चार्जिंग एप्लीकेबल टैक्स. by charging applicable tax. Second, for services which is covered under 9.5, A will not raise the tax invoice to B for the services part. He will not charge the tax. Why? Because Zomato will charge the separate, will make the separate tax invoice by charging the GST on 9.5 transaction. So it means it is advisable A has to also raise the two document, or if one document, it's maybe possible. But the Zomato has to make one another tax invoice and make sure A should not pay the tax on the 9.5 transaction. स्टेट ए और स्टेट बी वाले की बात कर रहे हैं आप नम्रता. पार्ट ए पार्ट बी में स्टेट राजस्थान और गुड़गांव उस वाले पॉइंट की बात कर रहे हैं. आर यू टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट पॉइंट? So I am e-commerce operator. I am having the principal place of business in Gurgaon. I do not have any principal place of business in UP. I do not have the principal place of business in Uttarakhand. But because there are certain restaurants who are registered with me, making the supply locally, I have to, exclude the 9.5 transaction. Exclude the 9.5 transaction. Here we are talking about the TCS category of registration. I am e-commerce operator, let's say Amazon, and I have to take registration in any state wherein I do not have the principal place of business. So how to obtain the registration? so that the part is being clarified. In part A, I will specify the respective state, let's say Rajasthan, but in the part B, they are saying you can report the main principal place of the business for which you have everything, address proof, etc. So that is slight relaxation they have given. एक बार रीड करेंगे ये वाला. Sometimes issue is required to collect the TCS in the state where it does not have the physical presence, since supplier listed on their ECU are located in that state. So मान लो ECU e-commerce operator के प्लेटफॉर्म पर रजिस्टर्ड है राजस्थान का सप्लायर, बट राजस्थान में अमेजन है ही नहीं मान लो, और वो राजस्थान में एक सप्लाई कर रहा है लेट्स से, तो इन दैट केस क्या होगा, वो अमेजॉन को रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा ना राजस्थान में, बिकॉज अदरवाइज हाउ ही विल कलेक्ट द टीसीएस ऑफ सीजीएसटी एंड एसजीएसटी. अगर वो सीजीएसटी और एसजीएसटी का, क्योंकि वहां पर एस कौन सा होगा, राजस्थान स्टेट होगा ना. सो मैं एक बार वापस रिपीट करता हूं. अमेजॉन इज हैविंग द प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस इन गुड़गांव, बट वन सप्लायर ऑफ राजस्थान इज रजिस्टर्ड इन एट अमेजॉन प्लेटफॉर्म, एंड लेट्स से अमेजॉन इज arranging the supply through courier company or something like that. Now, when Amazon will collect that tax TCS at the rate of 1%, they have to collect C plus S because it is intrastate supply. Then that S would be of Rajasthan, correct? Without taking the registration in Rajasthan, that ECU cannot collect the TCS as C plus S. So, to comply this, they are saying they have to take registration in every state. But then how it is possible? Because they do not have the principal place of business in every state. They are saying no problem. No problem. You can take registration in the state by showing only part A. Part B, you can report the principal place. देखो ऐसा भी तो हो सकता है ना, लेट्स फर्दर एक्सटेंड दिस पर्टिकुलर डिस्कशन. ऐसा भी तो हो सकता है ना कि अब यू मे आस्क दैट सर, इफ अमेजन इज नॉट हैविंग द प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस इज इन राजस्थान, हाउ इट इज पॉसिबल? यू माइट से हाउ इट इज पॉसिबल. लेट्स कन्वर्ट द ट्रांजेक्शन. ए इज ऑफ राजस्थान, हियर इज अमेजॉन, इट्स ECO 1. लेट्स से फ्लिपकार्ट ECO 2, and let's say Mr. B, who is a buyer in Rajasthan. B is placing the order on Flipkart. Flipkart in turn is giving to the Amazon. Amazon in turn is giving to the Rajasthan. And let's say Flipkart is arranging that delivery. What is the role of the Amazon? Nothing. What is the role of Amazon? Nothing. Only is arranging that transaction. But because he is the supplier side ECO, he has to collect the TCS, right? But how he can collect the TCS? Because he is registered in Gurgaon. So by this they are saying part A में Rajasthan डाल दीजिए, part B में पूरा complete everything would be of Gurgaon. Take the registration, no problem. Is that clear, Namrata? Kindly confirm. क्रिस्टल क्लियर. थैंक यू. अब मैं पूरे चैप्टर को समराइज करता हूं. मेरी एक हम्बल रिक्वेस्ट है सभी पार्टिसिपेंट से, आप आंसर जरूर करेंगे. आंसर जरूर. फ्रॉम माय साइड द चैप्टर इज डन, बट नाउ आई एम आस्किंग द क्वेश्चन इन कॉम्प्लिकेटेड मैनर. स्मार्ट, स्लो, स्मॉल क्वेश्चन. ट्राई टू अगेन एक्सप्लेन द एंटायर चैप्टर का कॉन्सेप्ट। ठीक है, स्टार्ट करें। चलो सर। टेल मी वन डिफरेंस बिटवीन 95 ई-कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर एंड other than 95 e-commerce operator with respect to invoice। वन बाय वन पूछ रहा हूं डिफरेंस। इस केस में इनवॉइसिंग कैसे होगी, इस केस में इनवॉइसिंग कैसे होगी ऑन अल्टीमेट कंज्यूमर, ऑन कस्टमर। 95 ईसीओ और अदर देन 95 ईसीओ इनवॉइस, टैक्स इनवॉइस कौन रेज करेगा? सॉरी यार, थोड़ी थोड़ा बुखार है, मतलब समथिंग आई एम नॉट वेल, तो बार बार खांसी आ रही है, थोड़ा इस टाइप का। Might be you are getting some disturbance or feeling I'm not too much well, but comfortable to take the class, no problem. आप लोगों को सभी को आंसर देना, ध्यान रखना, एवरी क्वेश्चन एवरी वन हैज टू आंसर। विच रिटर्न 95 ये ट्रांजेक्शन कहां पर रिपोर्ट करेगा और यहां पर ये क्या ट्रांजेक्शन रिपोर्ट करेगा? वेयर ही विल रिपोर्ट दिस ट्रांजेक्शन, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट ईसीओ, ये ट्रांजेक्शन कहां रिपोर्ट करेगा और ये वाला ट्रांजेक्शन कहां पर रिपोर्ट होगा? जीएसटीआर 1 and 3B में, एंड हियर जीएसटीआर 8 में। टीसीएस प्रोविजन इज एप्लीकेबल क्या? वेदर टीसीएस प्रोविजन इज एप्लीकेबल? क्या टीसीएस प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल है? नो, देन यस। ठीक है। In case of 95, TCS is not applicable. Registration is mandatory. Here I have two questions regarding the registration, whether it is mandatory, and second, which category. First question, whether it is mandatory registration. Is it mandatory registration? Is it mandatory registration? Then second question, in which category? दो पार्टिसिपेंट के आंसर एक जैसे आ रहे हैं, ऐसा तो नहीं कि आपस में साथ साथ बैठ के क्लास ले रहे हो, ऐसा तो नहीं है ना? It is not the case that you both are sitting together and taking the class, is it? Just asking. Correct. तो क्या रजिस्ट्रेशन मैंडेटरी है? अब देखो आप लोगों का आंसर थोड़ा सा अजीब है, यहां पे भी यस है और यहां पे भी यस है. यहां पे भी यस है और यहां पे भी यस है. मुझे एक बार आपको वो चार्ट बताना पड़ेगा, एक सेकेंड. आई ओपन दैट चार्ट एंड देन आई विल शो यू दैट पर्टिकुलर. So when I'm talking about the registration, section 24, they have the three different clauses. So currently my question was, if it is 9.5, then it is mandatory. Answer is yes, because of 24.6, it is 24.4, it is mandatory. Other than 9.5, ये रहा सेक्शन 52 टीसीएस है ना. अदर देन 9.5 क्या है? अगर टीसीएस एप्लीकेबल है तो यस 24.10. इज इट क्लियर कि दोनों का रजिस्ट्रेशन मैंडेटरी है, एज्यूमिंग अदर देन 9.5 बट टीसीएस इज एप्लीकेबल. सो which category? Here it will come under the regular category and here it will come under the TCS category. Please tell me the nature of transaction. Goods only, only services, or goods and services both? Goods only, service only, goods and services both. And what about here? नाइन फाइव में कोई थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट नहीं है. देर इज नो थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट फॉर 9.5. देर इज नो थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट फॉर 9.5. इट इज मैंडेटरी रजिस्ट्रेशन. जो टीसीएस के प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल है, क्या वो सिर्फ सर्विस के लिए, क्या वो सिर्फ गुड्स के लिए, या गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज बोथ? हियर ऑल्सो इट कैन बी ओनली सर्विसेज, इट कैन बी ओनली गुड्स, या गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज बोथ? दिस इज माई क्वेश्चन. गिव मी द आंसर. The answer is absolutely correct. Here it is services only, and here it can be goods and services both. Now this difference is completed. I am asking some different question. Okay. Now let me ask some different question. Can composite dealer make the supply of goods through ECO or supply of the service through ECO, or both are not possible? Yeah, no. Which transaction is possible? Supply of the goods, supply of the service, or none of the above? What is the right answer? Absolutely correct. Only goods are allowed through ECO, not services. Very right answer. Now, see, Mr. A like to make the supply of the goods or like to make the supply of the service through ECO other than 9.5. Other than 9.5. It means TCS is applicable. TCS is applicable other than 9.5 I'm talking about. Whether Mr. A has to take registration mandatorily in case of the goods, in case of the services, or in case of the both, or in case of all, threshold limit would be applicable. My question is whether Mr. A has to take a registration mandatorily. A को क्या रजिस्ट्रेशन मैंडेटरली लेना पड़ेगा? कब? अगर वो गुड्स की सप्लाई कर रहा है तो लेना पड़ेगा, सर्विस की सप्लाई कर रहा है तो लेना पड़ेगा, दोनों के केस में लेना पड़ेगा, या किसी भी केस में नहीं लेना पड़ेगा टिल थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट it is below threshold limit. Turnover is below threshold limit. Turnover is below threshold limit. किस केस में? In which case? रजिस्ट्रेशन मैंडेटरी रिक्वायर्ड. गुड्स के केस में, सर्विस के केस में, दोनों के केस में, या दोनों में नॉट एप्लीकेबल टिल थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट नॉट क्रॉस्ड. Not happy. Not happy with the answer. Only the right answer is given by Prerna Kochar. Till now I have received the right answer from Prerna Kochar. बाकी लोग कहां चले गए? Where you all? I am not receiving the right answer. हाँ, गीता का राइट आंसर है, प्रेरणा का राइट आंसर है, नम्रता का राइट आंसर है. मोहम्मद एक बार रिपीट करना. सर्विस के केस में मैंडेटरी है, गुड्स के केस में मैंडेटरी है, दोनों के केस में मैंडेटरी है, दोनों के केस में मैंडेटरी नहीं है. आंसर इज गुड्स के केस में मैंडेटरी है, सर्विस में टिल थ्रेशोल्ड नहीं लेना, टिल थ्रेशोल्ड नहीं लेना, टिल थ्रेशोल्ड नहीं लेना. वो एक नोटिफिकेशन मैंने बताया था ना, 65/2017 एक नोटिफिकेशन था विच टॉक्स अबाउट इन केस ऑफ द सर्विसेज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू टेक registration. See, one thing I hope it is clear to all. One thing let me tell you, it is clear to all. We are talking about the amendment till April or May, whatever the amendment which is considered in the book. there would be certain more amendment which is probably had already happened in the law, because 1st October 23 we are not talking about currently. So you might thinking sir गलत पढ़ा रहे हैं, because आज की तारीख में तो कुछ प्रोविजन अलग है. If you talk about the provision are different, might be in some cases, not at all cases. Slight changes are there from 1st October 23. Please note one thing, let it clear that whatever we are reading based on the study material. Now there would be the separate class there would be the separate class on the amendment, which probably I would be taking that classes also. So जो amendment आपके एग्जाम्स के लिए इफेक्टिव है, which is not there in the study material, we will take care separately, so there would be no confusion. ये बात सभी के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. मैं रिपीट करता हूं, अभी हम जो पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं, आज हम नवंबर में पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं, बट वी आर रीडिंग बेस्ड ऑन द स्टडी मटेरियल which is updated till April. Correct. If there is any further changes after that study material till your exam applicability, we will take care in the separate class. Even though certain provision are changed, but I am not talking about the changed provision. The reason it will create the confusion in your understanding level. We will take care separately because that will be also much important for the exams. So अगर अलग से रखेंगे तो आप ज्यादा क्लियर रहेंगे. ठीक है, ये बात एक बार सभी लोग कंफर्म कर दो. दिस पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट इज क्लियर टू ऑल, राइट. ये जो अमेंडमेंट वाला है ना, मतलब इट इज क्लियर टू ऑल, करेक्ट. कोई अगर फाइनेंस एक्ट 23 का इफेक्टिव डेट 1 अक्टूबर 23 था, so might be you may think that sir you are not teaching correctly or something like that. So I have to get clarify this point to all. प्रेरणा, अभी तो यूटर्न नहीं लग रहा चैप्टर में, राइट? अभी तो यूटर्न नहीं लग रहा चैप्टर में, मैं राइट? If there are multiple issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, the TCS provision is applicable on which issue? TCS provision is applicable on which issue? If there are multiple issue in a single transaction, then the TCS provision applicable on which issue? Absolutely correct, which is connected to the supplier. आप लोगों के राइट आंसर देखता हूँ ना, मेरा दिल खुश हो जाता है, सच में. मुझे बहुत खुशी मिलती है जब when you are giving the right answer. Correct. And when you are giving the wrong answer, then also it is my responsibility to explain again. So दोनों केस में okay. So which is connected to the supplier? Which is connected to the supplier? एक क्वेश्चन नम्रता आपने पूछा था थोड़ी देर पहले, तो प्रोबेबली मैंने शायद कुछ डिफरेंट आंसर दिया होगा. लेट मी क्लैरिफाई अगेन टू ऑल. अब ए सप्लाई कर रहा है 95 ईसीओ के माध्यम से टू बी को, ठीक है. यहां पे लेट्स से वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द जोमेटो, ठीक है. सो ये जो टर्नओवर है, ये आई हैव गिवन प्रोबेबली इट विल बी काउंटेड इन बोथ, करेक्ट. बट in my view, so nowhere it is written that it will be not be counted in the 95. If you read the circular 170, it is written that the turnover would be counted in A. Nowhere it is written that it will not counted in the 95 Zomato. तो but probably क्या है, ये वाला टर्नओवर काउंट नहीं होना चाहिए. Ideally, if you ask, it should not be counted in the 95 का turnover. It would not be counted in the hand of the Zomato. It would not be counted in the hand of Zomato. I hope it is clear. नम्रता, थोड़ी देर पहले आपने क्वेश्चन एक पूछा था, सो आई होप आई हैव गिवन द रिप्लाई राइट नाउ. अभी जस्ट मुझे वो रजिस्ट्रेशन का पॉइंट था, सो आई हैव क्लैरिफाइड टू यू. Now let's move further. So that particular transaction, let me talk about 1 2 point of the circular 167, whether ECO required to reverse the proportionate ITC. Simple yes or no. I have explained lot on this point, so you all are clear. Not applicable, correct? See, in case of section 52, TCS, tell me that, let's say we are talking about Amazon is collecting the TCS and also raising the invoice for the commission on the supplier, Mr. A. Is a supplier is raising the commission invoice. So whether Amazon in this case compulsory need two registration or it is suffice with one registration? एक रजिस्ट्रेशन से काम हो जाएगा और it compulsory require two registration. In this example, let's say Amazon who is liable for collecting the TCS and also raising the invoice on Mr. A for commission. So is it compulsory to take two separate registration or suffice with one registration? Ha, Namrata, right. It will not be counted. It should not be counted. It should not be counted, but nowhere it is explicitly written anywhere. Explicitly, you will not find anywhere, but in my view, it will not be. It should not be counted in the hand of Zomato. Number two, my question was that Amazon who is liable for TCS and he's raising that tax invoice on Mr. A, which is a supplier. So now in this case, this is my example. In this case, Amazon need to take two separate registration or only one registration is okay? Two separate registration या एक से काम हो जाएगा? That was my question. Two registration, absolutely correct. So what is the maximum time limit to furnish the GSTR 8? कोई एक maximum time limit है ना कि इस इतने टाइम तक भर सकते हैं, इससे ज्यादा नहीं भर सकते. You cannot furnish after that period. You cannot furnish after that period. The right answer is 3 years after the due date. What is the quantum of late fees if the GSTR 8 is not filed? What is the quantum of late fees? What is the quantum of late fees if the GST rate is not filed within time? ₹200 per day subject to the maximum of 10,000. Correct? Huh. What is the form number? GSTR annual return का form number? Okay. What is the form number for annual return in case of TCS and in case of 95? What is the form number of annual return in case of the TCS e-commerce operator and in case of 95 e-commerce operator? Nine B for TCS ECO and GSTR 9 regular return for 52 for 95 regular return क्योंकि रेगुलर सप्लाई है ना कहां पे उसको 95 but it's where to report the same. No problem, no problem, no problem. Whether TCS is applicable on exempt supply, whether TCS is applicable on exempt supply. From my side, answer is no, not. It is only on taxable supply. So my side, today class is completed. I hope you all have enjoyed the discussion. Only one request at every point of time, must connect with me on LinkedIn profile, CA Arun Chajid. The only purpose that so we all can connect it professionally. क्योंकि कभी भी आप एग्जाम क्लियर करोगे, जब आप अपने करियर में आगे बढ़ोगे, आई वुड गेट बी इंटीमेटेड and I have the right also on all of you. Correct? So be connected, and there is no other purpose marketing because you all know only connected with the board of study to teach you, otherwise nowhere connected. Thank you so much. Good night to all of you. आधा मिनट और वेट कर लेते हैं फिर आधा मिनट है ठीक है चलो सर आप क्विट कर सकते हैं सर